Hi guys, it's Danny the Awesome, and today I wanted to talk about books that have changed my life. Because reading was a big part of my life, and it still is. Although I've kind of made the terrible transition from traditional books to fan fiction. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about books that have changed my life because a lot of books have, and I think a lot of people who don't read think that it's a waste of time. And one of my favorite quotes is, I do not choose to read because what? Nope. Basically, they're saying reading gives you multiple lives instead of none. So a lot of people are like, why do you read when you can socialize? But, I mean, have you ever read a book and you meet someone else who's also read that book and you just immediately connect? I mean, it's like the best way to socialize because you experience a world, you learn from other people's mistakes, and you connect with real people too. So I'm going to say it 5 times in this video. I'm going to talk about books that have changed me. So the first one I'm going to talk about is one that I don't have here, and that's why I want to talk about it first because I don't want to forget about it. And that's The Absolutely Normal Chaos. And it's about this girl. I don't quite remember her name, but she had lots of siblings and cousins, and they all have 2 names, like Mary Carol, or, like a first name that is 2 names, like Susie Lee or something, and then the last name. And it's very it comes off as very trivial, and it's like her family drama, but it becomes really deeper than that. And there's also 12-year-old love or whatever, but it's actually a book that's really moving and is a lot more than what it seems at first. And that was one of the first books that really hit me when I was a kid. And I'm not quite sure when I read it the first time, but I know my friend Nick, who was in the video a couple of days ago, she really loved the author, and so that was the only book of that author, and she wanted me to read all their other stuff, but that was the only book I got to read, and I reread it every couple months, every time I was at her house, and we would sleep over. I'd pick it off her shelf, and she'd be like, oh, come on, Danny. But alright, next I'm gonna try and go chronological order. I'm gonna say The Last Payback. Now, I haven't read this in a long time, so I can't really tell you exactly what happens, but basically it's about this girl named Dimple, and her twin brother is shot to death. And so she and her twin brother live by the motto, never delay a payback. And so she's convinced that her former best friend, who is also the best friend of her brother, did it, Ronnie. So she is set out to pay back the death of her brother. And it's really just a book about how children deal with grief, and it's a great book. All I really remember from it, honestly, was there's this one line where it goes, Dimple Dorfin, you tried to kill me. And so I thought it was so clever that I always told myself when I got my first phone, I would say, Dimple Dorfin, you tried to call me, as my voicemail. And so I did. I finally got it 2 years later. I guess it must have been 4th grade because I got my phone in 6th grade. And I remember I got my phone and I recorded that as my voicemail, and my mom got mad because I used a bad word. So I had to change it, but that's all I remember about that book. But I promise you, it really did change me. I'm really not sending these books. I'm not good. Okay. The next book is Captain Hook. This book is about Captain Hook, but it really puts him in a different light. Have any of you seen Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along blog? This is the book version of that, and instead of Dr. Horrible, it's Captain Hook. And it's you're so excited about the villain, and it's actually when he's a child, and it's just so moving, and you really kind of hate Captain. And you don't hate Captain Hook, you hate Peter Pan. So it says The Adventures of a Notorious Youth. Go read it, please. I really need to reread this. Remember when books used to say what age limit they were? Anyway, the next book, which to do first? I'll do Hope Was Here. Hope Was Here. I read this like once a year, and Nick always makes fun of me for rereading because I always reread books and she never rereads books. Very, very rarely. She does sometimes. Huh? There's a bunch of things. Yeah?
I need to go down and watch that TV show right there.
No, thank you. I'll come down later, though.
Okay.
I found a bunch of things in here. That's funny. Edward the Mortician. Ah! This brings back so many memories. So, this is amazing. See, so this just proves it's my childhood. I found a bunch of stickers that say my Twitter name. Guys, go read all of these books. I'm sorry, I'm taking way too long. Okay, next, The Outsiders. I don't know how you passed middle school / high school / elementary school without reading this book. It's a book about tragedy. It's a book about dealing with bad situations. It's a book about social classes. And it's written by a woman at a time when women didn't write. So, I mean, that makes it seem really old because Jane Austen wrote. But you know what I mean. Jane Austen wrote under a pen name. Thank you very much. Around the same time, I wrote Homeless Bird, which is about a girl in the 50s in India who, she's a very typical Indian. She marries this boy who's supposed to be 19 and she's 15. And, it ends up being a con, and the boy is actually 15, and he's dying, and that's why they need her dowry, and so that's why they married her, so that they could pay for his trip to the Ganges. And so it's basically her terrible life. It's a toned down version of like Kite Runner and stuff like that, except for in India, and it's not nearly as gruesome. Although a lot of bad stuff happens, so this is a kid-friendly version of that. Pictures of Hollis Woods. I watched the movie of this before I read it, and frankly it was better. But I love the book too. I also read it when I was a bit too old to read this book, so it's great. I don't even know how to describe that. Basically Hollis is she's found at the corner of Hollis and Woods, and that's why her name's Hollis Woods. And she is this orphan who lives. It's kind of a flashback thing. It's how when she's living with this lady named Josie, who's an old painter, and then like the flashbacks is when she was with this family, and it's just great. So good. And it really explains like how terrible the foster system is in America. And it really moves you. Please read this book. What next? Okay. Tithe. This book. It's about this girl named Kay, who she finds out she's a fairy. Sounds so terrible. And she lives in New Jersey, and I love that she lives in New Jersey. I live in Southern California, but it's like it adds a normal element to the book, which is like what I like. And I would say this book and the third book in the series, Ironside, I reread these books anytime I'm angry, anytime I'm tired, anytime I don't have anything else to read, about once a month. I'm not even gonna lie. These books are a big part of my life. Break is a really depressing book, but it's really interesting, and it's not a book I've ever seen in any other shape or form. It's about this boy who's addicted to breaking his own bones, and it's a bit gruesome because like there's one time where like it's a hammer and smashes his toes, and you're just kind of like, no, I don't want to read this. But also it's about this boy, Jonah, who's in pain, not well physically, but also like he has this thing that it's funny throughout the whole, well, not funny, throughout the whole book he's trying not to become addicted to this, but like everyone's kind of pushing him towards it. And a lot of people are like, that doesn't make sense, why would he be addicted to it? But actually it makes sense, and you just should read the book and find out why. And lastly, well, kind of, Little Brother. basically what happens if the government went crazy. If you've read 1984, then this is a play on it because the government's called Big Brother. It's about a 17-year-old boy who brings down the Department of Homeland Security. Really awesome. And also it's free online. But buy it, support the author. It's like so good. I'm like addicted to it. It's one of my favorite books. I actually convinced my dad to read it, and I reread it twice already. And actually, I forgot to add this. I hate to be the stereotype, but Bridge to Terabithia. It's a really... I read that when I was in 3rd grade, and that's the perfect time to read it, because it's written very simply. I really only remember the end, when you know what happens, but I also remember the very beginning, and it's just a boy running in the fields, and that's how it begins, and it's just like, I wonder why that's what I remember about the book. Like, what does that say? I don't know. Pick my brain. What does that mean? So, that book is about friendship, and it's also about, kind of like, where was it? The Last Payback. It's about grief and how children deal with it, and what friendship really matters. What friendship really, I don't know. So those are some of the books that are really important to me. They're not necessarily my favorite books, although they mean a lot to me, so, yeah.